This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. One day after a Winnipeg serial killer was sentenced for murdering 4 women, people are gathering at the Forks to honor the families and remember the victims. For more, we're joined live by the CBC's Ian Fraze next to Odena Circle, where the memorial is starting this hour. So, Ian, what are you seeing there tonight?
Definitely a somber mood as people continue to absorb the weight of yesterday's sentencing hearing. Court heard some emotional victim impact statements from people who say their lives will be forever changed by this tragedy. Convicted killer Jeremy Skibitsky receiving the maximum sentence, life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. Earlier in the day, Premier Wabkanu says he hopes parole is never granted.
This person can never be allowed to see the light of day as a free person in our country again. The crimes that were committed, the terrible actions which are now part of this person's vocabulary, means that they can never be free again. And I'm not entertaining exceptions to that. So we spoke to family members yesterday, and they said we need to remember this when this person applies for parole in the future.
So, Ian, with the court case now over, the landfill search is once again back in the news. So what's the latest on that front?
Yeah, the Premier says he'll do a walkthrough of the Prairie Green site tomorrow to get a sense of where things are at with the search. He says he shared an update about the search to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau earlier today during a run they had. Trudeau was wrapping up his visit to Winnipeg.
What I told him is that we have voices from each of the families helping us to run this oversight committee so that they can steer the project management. We're working with leadership, including the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, to give them a really concrete role in the operations of the search as that moves forward. And bottom line, we are on track for that October targeted phase of where we believe the bodies of these 2 women are most likely to be.
As we've been told before, if nothing is found during that initial effort, the search area will be expanded. Brittany.
All right, CBC's Ian Fraze live tonight. Thanks, Ian. A program aimed at cracking down on crime in 3 city neighborhoods will continue temporarily for another 2 months. The Manitoba government has once again extended its retail theft and violent crime initiative with the Winnipeg Police. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, a longer-term solution is still being figured out.
Tucked behind the counter of his restaurant in Old Market Square, Bodego's owner Nick Van Segelen doesn't see a lot of crime in his shop, but does notice vandalism in the neighborhood.
You're seeing windows, getting broken, little things like that, little break and enters into some stuff because of those broken windows or doors or whatever.
The province and Winnipeg Police partnered in June on a temporary retail theft and violent crime initiative to crack down on problems some businesses are seeing. It pays officers overtime to patrol the Exchange District, Osborne Village, and the West End, and routinely check in with shop owners. The program was extended into July and August, and now Manitoba is giving the WPS an additional $774,000 to keep it running through October.
These resources that we're making available here today will ensure that the initiative can continue while we continue to work closely with the Winnipeg Police Service to explore options and move towards a longer-term sustainable solution.
Winnipeg Police say between June 8th and August 22nd, 462 arrests were made and more than $24,000 worth of stolen goods were recovered. During that time, officers interacted with more than 6,500 people and businesses. Opposition Progressive Conservative leader Wayne Owasco says the problem requires more than burning out officers with overtime. He says it's not only an issue in downtown Winnipeg, but one that's happening all over the province. The Justice Minister didn't commit to making the program permanent, but he says talks are ongoing to figure out what to do after October. Van Segelen thinks more also needs to be done to address underlying issues of mental health, addictions, and poverty, but he sees benefits to having a larger police presence in the neighborhood.
I usually talk to them a couple times a week. I'll see a unit kind of roll in, just do a check-in.
And he wants that to continue beyond October. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A former family doctor in Manitoba is going to jail. Arcel Bissonnette has been sentenced to 12 years for sexually assaulting his female patients, some multiple times. CBC's Cameron McLean has the latest.
64-year-old Arcel Bissonnette showed little reaction as Court of King's Bench Justice Sadie Bond read her sentencing decision. Bissonnette was convicted last year of sexually assaulting 5 women during medical appointments. In February, he pleaded guilty to assaulting 2 other women. The assaults all took place at Bissonnette's clinic in St. Anne between 2001 and 2017. The Crown had asked for a sentence of 18 years, while the defense wanted 9. Bond sentenced Bissonnette to 12 years in prison. She said he was in a position of authority over his victims, which warranted the longer sentence. In her decision, Bond said Dr. Bissonnette has shown no insight into the harmfulness of his conduct and has expressed no remorse for his conduct. Bond says she hopes that with counseling, Bissonnette will come to recognize the harm and ongoing pain he has caused the victims.
Justice Bond, when she gave her decision, that she's giving a sentence that is higher than what we have seen historically for these types of offenses, and I think that's reflective of the criminal justice system responding and appreciating the harm that is caused by these offenses.
Crown Attorney Renee Lajemoutier says the survivors all showed courage by coming forward and says patients need to be better informed about what types of examinations are medically necessary.
Mr. Bissonnette was able to sexually assault these women because many of them did not know what the exams entailed, or they did not feel comfortable speaking up, or they trusted that what he was doing was medically necessary.
The Crown had asked for a lifetime sex offender registration, but Bond set the term at 20 years, citing an assessment that found Bissonnette had a low likelihood of reoffending. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is calling on the Premier to extend the province's gas tax holiday for good. The CTF says currently Manitobans have the lowest gas prices in the country, which it says is due to the province cutting the 14-cent per litre gas tax. The NDP removed the tax at the beginning of the year for 6 months, then extended it, and that cut is now set to expire at the end of next month. But the CTF would like to see it scrapped permanently. The group says right now drivers in Manitoba pay around 34 cents a litre in taxes when they fill up, while elsewhere across the country it costs drivers almost double that. It's been 3 years since American troops left Afghanistan and the Taliban took control of the country. Since then, girls and women have been banned from many areas of public life, including going to schools and universities. Last week, the Taliban passed a law formalizing even more restrictions for both men and women. As the CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports, an Afghan newcomer in Winnipeg says it's crushing women's hopes for the future.
Fariba Kayumi often goes for walks and visits parks near her home in Winnipeg. Freedoms girls and women in Afghanistan no longer have under Taliban rule.
It's a very difficult situation for all people of Afghanistan.
The Taliban took control of the country 3 years ago. Since then, girls and women have been barred from many areas of public life, going to parks, school beyond grade 6, and most lines of work.
A risk for me.
Kayumi lost her job in Kabul. So did her husband. Their daughter no longer attended school.
She just cried. What should I do? What will be my future?
Kayumi came to Canada with her family last November. Last week, the Taliban passed a vice and virtue law covering everything from dress codes to music. The rules say women must cover their faces in front of male strangers. They also say women can't read aloud or sing in public.
My brother and sister, they have girls which are who are living in a house like a prisoner without any hope for future.
Advocate Ariana Yaftali is concerned the law will exacerbate mental health and poverty while also stoking extremism in the region.
Even 1 day is too much for the Afghan people.
Crackdowns on internet and social media use could be next, according to Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan. Senior Director Mourwarid Zioui says Canada's condemnation of the law isn't enough.
For international community and people outside Afghanistan, it's just a news. For Afghans inside the country, it's their life. And that is something we want international community to feel it, to listen to it, to see it, and to take action.
She still has hope, as does Kayumi.
The bitter thing is that my daughter is going to school.
Hope for the future. Hope for resistance. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
People forced from their homes in Bunabonabee Cree Nation can start to return home this weekend. Thousands from the First Nation were forced out in mid-August when the fire started. Roughly 2,500 displaced people were airlifted out to hotels in Winnipeg and Brandon, with some taking up temporary refuge at the University of Winnipeg Recplex. The province says it has now contained an 11,000-hectare fire that is burning just south of the community, meaning residents can plan to go home. 41 firefighters from Atlantic Canada and 11 from Minnesota have been helping battle wildfires throughout the province. Disheartened and in disbelief, a Minnesota artist is left searching yet again for the head of a sculpture that got stolen for a third time. 4 years ago, the artist created a sculpture of a sitting man leaning forward, one elbow on his leg. It lives on a bench in front of her shop and gallery in Minnesota. It became an instant attraction with people posing next to it for photos, but it's also become a target for vandalism. The sculpture has been beheaded 3 times, most recently this past weekend. While it was returned after the first 2 thefts, the head now remains missing.
If I was to put a value on my statue, it would be well over $2,000. So it is a hefty crime, without a doubt. But being angry is somewhat futile. We're going to try and rise above that and just say, okay, whoever you are, if you really need a second head that badly, come in and we'll make one with you.
She says she wants people to know it's not a joke anymore, and it has been reported to police. Well, what do you get when you take an obsession with Iranian film and combine it with a love-hate relationship with the city of Winnipeg? Well, the answer can be found in the film Universal Language, a surrealist comedy that blurs the lines between Winnipeg and Tehran. Here's a line from the film in Farsi.
همون جوری که رودخونه حسین و بوین میپیونده به رود قرمز ما هم همه به هم وصلیم آقا.
Translated into English, that means just as Assiniboine joins the Red River, we are all connected. Since its debut, the film has won prestigious awards at film festivals. Now it's been chosen as Canada's official entry for Best International Film at the Oscars, giving it a shot at being nominated. Director Matthew Rankin was on Information Radio this morning.
It's a very, very Winnipeg film. Yeah, I think Winnipeggers will look at the city in a new way watching it.
The film is set to make its North American premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival next month. Well, I don't know if you were like me this morning, but I was woken up by that really loud thunder overnight that we had and that rain. And we are potentially getting a little bit more tonight overnight, but let's take a look at what we're seeing around the province. We did have the possibility of favorable conditions for funnel clouds in Brandon, Carberry, Verdon area. That advisory has just been lifted. Rainfall warning over in Fort Frances, and we are still dealing with those air quality statements and advisories because of the wildfire smoke. You can see in the central northern part of the province a lot of cloud cover, and we are starting to see a little bit of that system making its way into Brandon this hour, and possibility that we could see some thunderstorms action there tonight as well. Temperatures have dropped a little bit this hour in comparison to last night. We're sitting in that low to mid to high teens and just hitting that 20-degree mark here in Winnipeg. This is what we're looking at and what's ahead. We are still seeing some of those scattered showers more in the central northern northern part of the province, but that's going to make its way into Winnipeg and some of that northern eastern section of the province as well overnight tonight. Possibility that we could see a few showers here in the south as well, but really up further into the northern part of the province. Looking for a little bit of that tomorrow night here in the south, but otherwise a mostly sunny day for us here. Looking for that 22 degrees by noon tomorrow. Sunny skies, what we're looking for our 5 days. Possibility that we could see a little bit of rain on Saturday as well, but otherwise looking like a really nice long weekend for us here in the southern part of the province. It's a big weekend for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They'll be heading to Regina on Saturday ahead of the Labor Day Classic. Now, the annual tradition sees them take on their rival team, the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The Bombers are just a win away from taking the top spot in the West Division standings, which Saskatchewan currently holds. And despite having lost to the Riders when they last played the team in July, the Riders haven't won a game since. Head coach Mike O'Shea acknowledged that all rivalries aside, this weekend's game is an important one too.
It's a big game. Once again, in our room, we'll always try. I'm not saying we're successful, but we'll always try to keep it pretty even-keeled, level, and focus on the work that's being put in and not focus on the outcomes.
Kickoff is at 6 p.m. Sunday. The Bombers will then take on the Riders again here the following weekend, of course, in the Banjo Bowl. He calls it a costly coalition. The Conservative leader is urging his NDP counterpart to pull his party's support for the Liberal government in a bid to trigger an election. More on that when we return after this short break. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is calling on Jagmeet Singh to withdraw NDP's support of the Liberal government, a move that would have triggered an election. But as Olivia Stefanovich reports, that is not likely to happen.
Riding high in the polls, the Conservative leader is calling on the NDP leader to end his agreement propping up the Liberals.
Break the costly coalition with Trudeau to trigger a carbon tax election.
In a letter, Pierre Poilievre calls on Jagmeet Singh to pull out of the costly coalition and vote non-confidence in the government this September to trigger a carbon tax election in October of this year.
Jagmeet Singh is trying to delay the election until after February of next year so that he can qualify for a $2.2 million taxpayer-funded pension.
It's all part of a larger Tory strategy. They have been targeting Singh for months.
Sell out Singh. He gets his pension. You pay the price.
What it doesn't mention is that Poilievre qualified for his MP pension in 2010.
I don't think that responding to Pierre Poilievre's kind of little bombshells is what we want to be focusing on.
Instead, New Democrats say they're concentrating on making the most of their deal with the Liberals, an agreement that they say will end on their terms.
It has always been on the table that it could end at some point. That doesn't mean that Pierre Poilievre gets to make those decisions.
He'll come after our pensions and our EI.
With two upcoming by-elections in Manitoba and Quebec, the NDP is hitting back with attack ads.
Vote no to Conservative cuts in Elmwood-Transcona.
As for the Liberals, the government is brushing off any suggestion their deal with the NDP is in jeopardy.
We need to really take these assertions by the Conservative leader with a very healthy grain of salt.
Some Liberals say the more time they wait to call an election, the more time the economy will improve. Something the finance minister calls bad news for the Conservatives, despite the Liberals trailing in the polls for well over a year. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
A discount airline is now offering some flights for just $1. It seems too good to be true, and there are some skeptics. Nisha Patel explains.
The new Flair Airlines offer of some base fares for just $1 is an attention grabber for potential customers.
I'd love to take advantage of it if I can.
Hey, make it to as many destinations as you can for $1. I'm good with it.
I'm all about the saving money.
But others are skeptical.
I'd have to assume there'd be a whole bunch of other charges or flights might get disrupted.
There is a catch. For now, the deal is on select flights back to Canada from sun destinations like Mexico, though that could change depending on the season. It's a way for Flair to fill seats on flights that have less demand.
Even if we put 4 people onto that flight who otherwise wouldn't have taken it, that's great. We're happy about that.
The true cost, though, is more than $1. Take a December flight from Cancun to Calgary. Taxes and airport fees add more than $80, plus extras like a checked bag, another $85. All in, that's about $167.
It's a gimmick. They're doing this to try to drive business to the site and to get people comfortable with flying on this airline.
That may be a big challenge for Flair. The low-cost carrier made headlines back in March when flight cancellations left passengers stranded for days. Flair is also reportedly trying to raise cash as it tries to manage its huge debt burden.
They're trying to give some confidence to the marketplace that they are going to be around.
With rivals Lynx, Swoop, and Canada Jetlines all out of the picture this year, industry watchers say Flair did have a profitable summer.
Do they have enough cash left over from summer, basically to carry them over until next summer? And that's the question.
And the answer to that is still up in the air. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
We'll be back with today's Daily Lift. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Stay with us. An amazing sight greeted passersby on a road overlooking the Swiss Alps. Here's your daily lift. What looks like an avalanche is actually clouds rolling down into a mountain pass in Switzerland. The weather phenomenon is known as Fen, which is German and means hairdryer. It occurs when a humid, cold air mass rises over a mountain and cascades down the other side. It also causes the air to rapidly become hot and dry when it reaches the valley. And it looks beautiful. I'm just wondering how cold that's actually going to be there. Beautiful phenomenon and beautiful going into our long weekend. I will see you back here ahead of that long weekend tomorrow. Have a wonderful night.